Yes?
Yes. You mentioned on the long-term care insurance. I'm just using as an example the 80% probability of needing it, and the $300,000 you'd be out if you didn't have it.
Yep.
Now, even if the insurance is run as a charity with no expenses, aren't they going to have to charge $240,000 of premium?
No, not necessarily. So,
where does the money come from?
For what?
To pay out the $300,000 that's going to be needed.
Well, I'll take 2 seconds to address that, because that's going to kind of be on the scope of what we're doing.
That's the 4-letter word math.
Yeah, a little different. So insurance companies, including, everybody know the Knights of Columbus is an insurance company?
That's how it was started.
That's how it was started. The Knights of Columbus started as an insurance company.
Before Catholics.
Yep, that's right. Irish Catholics.
Hey, he was Italian or Spanish.
Well, Father McGivney started Knights of Columbus in Hartford and started as an insurance company. So insurance companies are required by law to invest in certain assets and so forth and so on. They're regulated by the state. Insurance companies also have to pay a premium tax to the state that they are in, that they're doing business in, because if the insurance company goes belly up, the state will step in and take over. Okay?
And they do so well with financial matters.
Yeah, that's a story for a different day. So, but real quick. So I mentioned I have a long-term care policy through the Knights of Columbus. I have it has a cost of living adjustment to it. If I were to go in and need care today, I'd have in today's dollars $1.5 million of lifetime benefits. That means the Knights of Columbus would pay out on my behalf $1.5 million to assisted living or a nursing home. Of course, I know how to get on Medicaid too. You know, but I pay $150 a month. Of course, I got it when I was in my 40s. But so just do the math.
How do they finance the benefits?
I'm not going to get into that, to be honest with you, sir, because that's one of my. That's beyond the scope. It's beyond the scope.
They have a certain limit that they go to, and then they don't pay anymore?
Yes.
Really?
Called lifetime benefits. They used to write policies that had unlimited benefits. The insurance companies don't do that anymore.
No, so if you use up all that benefit, what then happens?
You gotta get on Medicaid. Yeah. All right. Couple questions here, 2 of which kind of go together. One says, is it true that a house can't be transferred to a child if there is an outstanding loan? And one says, what are the pros and cons of transferring property and assets to family members prior to your death or admission to long-term care facility? So it's never a good idea, necessarily, to transfer your house directly to your children. How many people in the room like to pay tax? Any volunteers? So God rest his soul, one of my tax professors said that death is the best income tax planning, but it comes with a high cost. The reason being is, and Bianca asked this question, some folks in the house have had their house for 40 or 50 years. It has appreciated substantially since the time you owned it. If you die today and give that house to your kids inherit it, and they turn around and sell it, how much income tax do they pay? Anybody have an answer between $0 and $1? Closer to 0. You get a stepped up basis. So if you bought your house for $40,000 and it's worth $400,000, you die today and leave it to your kids. What do the kids usually do with the house? Sell it. They turn around and sell it for $400,000. They pay 0 income tax. Okay. So 99% of the time, I recommend putting the house into a special kind of trust for Medicaid. Okay? 2 reasons. 1, it's the best tax answer to your kids. And 2, it gets out of your name legally. And 3, if your kids get sued and the house is in their names, what's at risk? Your own house that you're living in. Not a good answer. Right? And of course, we know we all live in a litigious society. So there's something called the Garn-St. Germain Act, federal law, that two things. One, if a house is transferred into a trust subject to a mortgage, that will not trip what's called a due on sales clause. The other exception is if you do transfer the house, which generally don't recommend, directly to your children, and they would be heirs under the thing, that would also not accelerate the mortgage, okay? Another question, should transitioning from Medicare to Medicaid be a goal that should be prioritized highly? People always ask this question. Bill, bless you, Bill Gates gets, I don't know, is Bill Gates 65? Yeah. Yeah, well Trump, right? Trump's 70 whatever. Trump gets Medicare. It has nothing to do with your wealth, right? Everybody, when you hit 65, everybody's entitled to Medicare, right? Medicare does not pay for long-term care, right? Most people have a supplement plan, right? So most of our clients, Medicaid is when we're talking about Medicaid, there's many Medicaid programs, we're talking about the long-term care program. Medicaid is a payer of last resort, okay? So you end up going into the hospital or you need your doctors or whatever, you still keep your Medicare, you still keep your Medicaid, your Medicare supplement, because when you go on Medicaid, you're actually allowed, Medicaid computes an allowance for you, you're allowed an allowance for your healthcare premium. So in effect, Medicaid is paying for it, right? So you keep your supplement, you keep Medicare. And then you have Medicaid, Medicaid pays for your long-term care.
Does Medicaid pay for long-term care if you stay in your home or only if you go in a nursing home?
They do pay for your care at home, up to 40 hours a week. New York has been running commercials. I don't know if anybody has seen this. I get up in the morning, I watch Channel 2 News. They have a program called Freedom Care. I don't know if you've seen the commercial, right? Connie's seen it, I'm sure. She's sort of shaking her head, right? Dad's sitting at the table or whatever, and his daughter is getting paid by the state of New York to take care of him.
But 40 hours a week, that's just a day and a half. I mean, that's...
Unfortunately, our home health program in New Jersey is not the best. Yeah. Yeah, but starting I think last summer, the state started to allow a preferred provider, they call it, to be paid to take care of. So I have a client, unfortunately she had to retire, her husband has Alzheimer's, and I mean she was close to retirement, but she didn't want to. But we're working to get her to get paid by the state to take care of her husband. Any other questions for me?
So it could be any family member?
The state will has to approve you. They'll come out and interview you and everything. Mm-hmm. Yep. Any questions for me? No? Okay. Next questions?
Do you know how to answer that? I don't know. It depends. It depends. Yeah. Let's stab at it.
Okay, this question says, in general, selling a house and moving into another residence, is it better to rent or buy? In parentheses, something smaller. Well, it really depends on your particular situation, okay? Buying something, depending upon your age, if you really want to take on that debt at the late stage in life, if it works for you, okay. There's no rule of thumb that says when you sell one house, it's better to rent or better. It's not. What most people do, it's not a rent or buy situation. It's what do you want to care for? So when you move from one house to another, do you want to move into a house where you still have to take care of the yard and you still got to take care of snow removal and the trash and all of that? Or do you want to move someplace like an adult community where that's all taken care of for you? So it's more so not necessarily a buy-sell. I look at it as what do you want to take on as far as responsibility. But
So, so it's about cash flow. It's about cash flow. right? And that's the proper answer to this question. It has nothing, there is no right or wrong answer. There's unique circumstances for each individual. I have clients that have sold, they lived in an apartment their entire life until they moved to New Jersey from New York City. And they bought a home here in retirement, right? Which it sounds maybe a little different than the people in this room and the path that they're used to seeing, where here we may own homes forever and then get some different places to live, right? But for what they paid in rent in New York City, they can have a huge home here and they pay somebody to do everything. They pay the cleaner, the painter, the garbage man, the lawn man. They don't do anything. They play golf. But really, it's about cash flow. That's the answer. And the only way you're going to know about cash flow is if you sit down with somebody and get organized financially and see what do your decisions look like, what impact do they have on your money over time. That's important, right? Yeah.
I didn't write a card, but I have a question for Bianca.
Okay.
As I was mentioning to you before, this is something new. I never heard of your service, to be honest.
Okay.
It's kind of a niche type service. Generally, what does that service cost?
Well, it is, we do kind of go through packages. It all depends. I mean, like we were saying, someone's been living in their home for 50 years. It's going to be a different situation as someone that already downsized a little bit and is in a condo and then moving to, you know, assisted living or something. So it does depend.
So you go in and evaluate what has to be done?
Yes, free consultation.
And then do you have different plans?
Yes, we have hourly packages, and of course, just like anything, if you buy more hours, the percentage goes down, things like that.
Do you have a flat program too?
We, yeah, I mean, an hourly, like a 10-hour program, we do have things like that. I can send you some information.
Yeah.
It's about, you know, I mean, it could be like a $30 an hour, you know, something like that, if you want to just do hourly, but that gets kind of expensive but if you buy like a 10 hour, then it kind of goes, you know, goes down percentage wise, so things like that. Okay, does that sound?
Yeah.
Yes?
I definitely want to get some of your cards.
Okay,
Yes,
awesome.
me too.
Awesome. All right.
Me too.
Thank you.
I'm not sure which one of you guys to address this question to.
Probably Jeremy.
I don't know. Not me. It's probably Darren.
Okay. If I decide to, you know, sell my home, which then I would definitely need your service, and move, I would probably want to move out of state. I heard that there was a exit tax from New Jersey of 9%.
Not no exit tax. It's a real estate transfer tax when you sell your house.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So if
Yeah.
I sell my house and say move to Pennsylvania, is it the net value of the house, so it's the, how?
Top of my head, I can't remember if you reduce it by, you have a mortgage? I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't remember if it's a net equity or not.
Of the
But we
stuff
do have
that
a
I
real
put
estate
in,
transfer
you know,
tax in New
Is
Jersey.
it the sell value minus what I put into it?
No, it's the value. I just don't remember if you reduce it by the mortgage.
Okay.
I don't do closings, so. Yeah.
Is that transfer tax only if you don't stay in Jersey and buy another house?
No, so the real estate transfer tax, so what we do most of the time, I don't do real estate closings, it's awful. Yeah, it's a nightmare. But oftentimes we're doing a quick claim deed, right? Because mom or dad or aunt or uncle, whoever is transferring the house into a trust. In order to record the deed, you have to file the papers about the real estate transfer tax, whether or not it's subject to it. Because it's a gift, it wouldn't be subject to the real estate transfer tax. So anytime you buy and sell a house in New Jersey, whether you're staying here or leaving, you know, you may be subject to the real estate transfer tax. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but if you leave Jersey, is there an exit tax if you sell a house? Because that's the rumor I've heard.
So there's no exit tax in New Jersey. We have a real estate transfer tax. And that's always been here. So whether you buy, where do you live, sir?
I live here in Bloomfield.
In Bloomfield, let's say, a lot of seniors move down to Ocean County, right, to 55 and older. So let's say you sell in Bloomfield and you go down to Ocean County. The house you sell here, you're gonna pay a real estate transfer tax on.
What is that amount? Is it a
I
percentage?
don't know.
It's 1%, I think.
1%?
I sold a condo 2 years ago, it was like 1%.
Right, correct. So I looked at selling my house this year, and it's a percentage.
It's just a tax because you sold your house?
It's like a sales tax.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's
But-
incumbent on the seller, not the buyer.
Right.
So-
And it's also, everybody pays it. So it's not like anybody special, there's nobody that gets away with not paying it. It's just something that we all pay, you own a home.
It's 1%, you said?
We think it's 1%, but what I would say is, if you have a question like that, write your name and phone number down on a card with the question and put it up here, really. And if you want a definite answer, I can guarantee you that either Darren or myself will contact you and we'll give you an answer, okay? That goes for any question that anybody has where we're not gonna have the answer at our fingertips immediately.
I'm not a lawyer, but the exit tax is that I think the state holds money to make sure that you file New Jersey state taxes the next year. That's the quote unquote exit tax.
On the sale of the house.
Yeah, because
Yeah, but
you get money on the
yeah.
proceeds, and I believe that's what they call the exit tax, but it's not really a tax.
It's not really an exit
It's just
tax.
forcing you to file
It's
taxes
withholding.
next year.
Yeah. So, Dan, actually, I was gonna ask you, a lot of times what we do, a lot of our clients are applying for Medicaid, they use the irrevocable prepaid funeral. Maybe you wanna just talk about that real quick?
Okay. Difference between an irrevocable and a You can tell I'm not used to yelling very much. There's two trust accounts, and actually the gentleman over there, Sean, is an insurance agent. I can't speak on the insurance part, but there's actually 3 ways to pre-fund your account. Well, 2 ways, but if there's an insurance and a trust account. With a trust account, there's 2 forms. There's something called revocable and irrevocable. One of the questions I have over there, I'm doing this from memory real fast, but if somebody already set up an account, so if you've set up a funeral account, you've already pre-funded it. You will be then, if I say it is a revocable account, okay.
They keep you up there.
All right, I'll come back to it. If you open a revocable account, you're perfectly healthy, you're not on Medicaid, you're not getting assistance, governmental assistance in any way. Whatever funds are in that account after your services go back to your family or your estate. So let's say you planned a exorbitant service, and you went with something a little bit less expensive, that balance would then be returned to the family. In a situation such as Medicaid, that balance would go back to the state of New Jersey because you've been receiving assistance that time while you were in a nursing home or anything of that nature. But one of the questions I have is if I have a prepaid funeral, and is it necessary to have a funeral agent, and how and where do you open a funeral account? They're kind of all tied together. If you have a family member you've pre-planned your funeral, your family gets the final decision on everything. Now, if you wanted full services, days of visiting and going to a cemetery, your family member could come in and say, nope, we're going to cremate them, the least expensive option, and I'll have all those funds come back to me. So that's where Darren would come in, and you maybe can make that a little bit more solid in a will of some type, but New Jersey, whoever is making your arrangements, has full control to do whatever they wish. So if you have a prepaid funeral, and I would say it would be necessary to even have a funeral agent, because just because you put your wishes down on paper, your next of kin is the one who decides what to do. If that next of kin doesn't agree with your decisions, well, you would have somebody that would. And the question about where and how do you open a funeral account, you would come to a funeral home, any funeral home, we would sit down with you and decide what would be best for you as far as the services that you wanted. And if you decide to put the funds aside, we would then sit down and go through either a trust account. I would ask Sean if you wouldn't mind to come up and explain more of the insurance piece of it, because legally he can, I can't. And you might be able to answer that too.
Dan,
Oh, I can't be specific.
before Sean does
Go ahead.
that, excuse me, Sean, you mentioned revocable, what about the irrevocable?
The irrevocable, I'm just using numbers, again, you can't quote me on it, but let's say somebody put $10,000 aside for a funeral.
Right.
Now, if their assets they're spending down, it's $2,000, right? So you would have to spend your assets down to $2,000 to qualify for certain Medicaid opportunities there. You can prepay your funeral before you spend down that money. So if you come down to, you have $2,000 left in account, that's would be what you would be allowed to use for the services. Or if you qualify for Medicaid, the government will, well, Medicaid, the state of New Jersey will allow $2,246 as their contribution to the services. A family would be allowed to contribute $1,570, and there's a burial cremation option of $524. So if my math is correct, the total amount that you can have with your family's assistance would be $4,340. That would be the total expenses for everything. Now, there'd be, you know, you're not allowed to have flowers in certain aspects of it if you're on Medicaid or an irrevocable funeral, where if it was revocable, you can do anything you want as far as you can have family fly in from out of state, that could be listed on those statements for, you know, if you sit down and actually plan everything out in advance, you can cover a lot more things than you think you would on a funeral. But on the other aspect of it, there's certain things you're limited to if you're qualifying for the irrevocable account. So think of it, revocable, money goes back to your estate or family. Irrevocable goes to the state of New Jersey. So, Sean, if you want the insurance piece.
Speaking of the insurance piece, it's relatively the same as the trust. There are some benefits for the insurance policy versus a trust policy. Typically, it's based on age and the need and the finances that you have available. But just the same, the insurance policy, if you planned ahead, well ahead of time, and at the time of planning or the need for Medicaid, that insurance policy can also be deemed irrevocable the same way a trust can. So it's not one versus the other when it becomes revocable versus irrevocable, money back to your family or otherwise. So that part is relatively the same. It's the planning ahead, well ahead of time, where the benefit of insurance versus trust is discussed with the funeral director when you go for those arrangements. Now, you can go to any funeral home. Not every funeral home offers insurance, but most, if not all, I believe, are part of the state trust, which is called Choices, and that's, you know, what Dan focuses on. And I come in as needed from left field when needed, when people want to do insurance policies and the like. So if there are questions for that, I'll be over there to answer them specifically after the Q and A. So you can focus on all the stuff for Dan and everyone up here, because everyone here, I will say, from left field, is given the exact information needed to all work together for everyone's benefit here. So the more questions you guys ask for everyone up here, the better. So. Anything else?
Well, actually, if I could, Connie, do you mind telling that story that I was asking you to do? You have to hear it to understand what she truly does. Sorry to embarrass you.
That's okay. When I met Dan, I was trying to explain to him some of the benefits of working with me. And he said, well, can't people just go online and look up a place and find it and they'll give you the prices? No, they won't. You go online, they will not give you the prices. However, if you go into that particular community, they will give you prices on the brochure. And I had a family one time that I was working with, and this has happened several times, but this one particular family, the pricing that's done for an assisted living, there are three components that it's mainly made up of. One is the apartment that you select. The second is your level of care. The more care, the more expensive. And the third is medication management. That means they take care of all of your medication. They put those three together, and that becomes your monthly price. So I had a family, and after they did this, their loved one needed a high level of care. The cost came out to $7,000 a month. They could not afford it. This is a place, and I work with tons of places, almost every place in New Jersey. There are some that I don't work with. And I bring them a lot of people. Some people have long-term care, and so therefore they're able to afford $7,000 a month because insurance. Excuse me.
Would the long-term care cover the $7,000?
Sometimes it depends on your plan. Because with long-term care, depending upon options you selected, it'll tell you what your daily benefit is, and then depending upon that, it may cover. It may mean that you have to supplement it some. But what I was able to do was to negotiate that price down to $4,000 a month. So for $4,000 a month, the family could afford to be in the place, and it was a very nice place. And the social worker who had referred the family to me, when I went back to the social worker to give her the medical paperwork she needed to fill out, she said, "What? They're going here? They can't afford this place." I said, "Oh, I got them in for $4,000 a month." She goes, "How did you do that?" She goes, "Can you get me a place?" That's the story.
I have a question, Dan, I'm sorry, this is a question.
My turn again, go ahead.
If you select a funeral director here in New Jersey, and you've created a plan, and you know where you're gonna be buried, I already have my burial plot, but say for instance I move out of state, would I keep my account with the funeral director here in New Jersey, because I will be transferring my remains from out of state into New Jersey to the funeral director here in order to be buried where I'm going to be buried here in New Jersey? Is that...
First, I gotta go to the microphone, because you guys already told me that.
Okay, so if you're in New Jersey now, if you create an account,
Yes.
and you're gonna be moving to a different state, or at the time, you're gonna be buried back in New Jersey?
Yes.
Or in the new state? You could keep your funds here. Certain funeral homes, myself, I'm licensed in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, so I can handle paperwork in both states, where another funeral home may have to get someone in Pennsylvania to do something like that, so it's things to look into. I always recommend people, I can't speak 100%, but I know New Jersey and New York, and I believe Pennsylvania, it's 100% trust. So whatever's in that account, 100% of it could go back to you plus the interest. So if you transfer that whole account to a funeral home in Pennsylvania, because things change, that account plus interest goes to Pennsylvania. Where it's different, I know Florida was different, I'm not sure if their law changed, but Florida can keep a percentage of the funds that you put in advance. So if you put in, say, $10,000 today, they can keep a percentage of it. If you come up to New Jersey with that account, they keep a percentage here or there, and whatever's left would come back. So if you're thinking of moving out of state, fund it in New Jersey, because then you get 100% of it, and our costs are pretty much higher than most of the states. You'll have more to go with you than if it would be the other way around. But in order to pre-fund that account, you do have to sit down and go over the particulars. So what the charges are for a cemetery today would be the charges we would put down on a piece of paper. At the time, you still have to go through the updated charges at that time. So when you do fund that, you have it that day. At the time, you would do it again. If you're switching to revocable or irrevocable from a revocable account, you have to make an arrangement again. So you can actually make 3 or 4 different arrangements through the process. So pre-arrangements, a transfer arrangement, an at-need arrangement. It can go so and so on from there. So long story short, if you're in New Jersey, you're going to be living out of state but coming back to New Jersey, my recommendation is you would use the funeral home in New Jersey, not just because I own one, but if you're here, we can coordinate better with other funeral homes and then bring you back. Where if you were in another state, I'll use an example, if somebody passes away in Florida, if a family member in Florida contacts a funeral home, they have different charges. Like every industry, there's kind of I'm saying this, maybe it's not going to say it on the internet, but if you're in Florida and you're going to be sent back to New Jersey, if I call the funeral home and arrange everything there, I can keep the charges lower. If you contact the funeral home there, they have their charges they have to charge you directly, and then the charges coming in to New Jersey. So it's always better to use the account that you're going to last. So if you're going to Florida, it wouldn't be a bad idea to pre-plan everything in Florida, and then they would be the one of contact. So your destination.
I just didn't know whether the funds that, if I have one here, okay, that it can be used for where I'm going to be to transfer me back.
Yep, in New Jersey, it's 100% can be transferred. Even interstate, it doesn't have to be out of state. So it's a trust account set up. It's almost like your bank account. It's yours. I just set up that account for you, and I can be called and tell you what your monthly, what it is at that point, but I don't have access to it until at the time.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Anybody else?
No, go ahead. So on that same topic.
Okay.
So do you transfer the body free of charge?
From-
Or you would have to pay money out of bank account to get the body back to New Jersey from Florida?
Okay, so if someone, so you say the person passed away in Florida, the question is if we would charge for that. There are charges for transportation, whether that would be from the airport, whether that be from where the person had passed away. We would utilize, Florida, it would be a distance. Pennsylvania, it's not that far of a drive. Florida, I will have to contact a funeral home in Florida. They would charge me their, we'll say, professional rates between funeral homes. Where if it was a family, they could be significantly more because can't really get into the details of it, but we're very regulated by the FTC, and there are certain charges that we have to charge. They would have to charge those to you because they're working directly with you. They could still charge them inter-funeral homes, but there's kind of a courtesy that we kind of go between each other. So it would be less if you do it with one, not both. So hope I didn't break the rules there on that. But so, anybody will just go around and ask any other questions of us, and we'll just keep getting up as.
Well, we still have much time? A couple more minutes.
Let us have a break in talking about funerals and dying and everything. I have something else that makes you happy. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I have a big voice. So. This is my experience that I want to tell you. I am not a rich person, but I have a little of it, you know what I mean. I have 6 children. They are all professionals. They are in good shape. I have properties before, but I asked them if they want this property. They want this property because, you know, I don't know when I will be leaving here, so I will have no more problems. They don't like anything of my properties. They don't like responsibilities because I have condos that I'm renting, so that I'll transfer the problem to them. They said, no, nobody wants it. So my decision is to sell them all. I don't know if this is crazy decision, but I sold them all. I sold my properties in Florida, the Philippines, all of those. I made it liquid money. I don't have no more property. That's why I'm now poor. No property. No property. So now that I have no problem with them because they don't like it. I said, do you like this condo? No, Mom, it's not my type. Oh my God, I'm just giving you. It's not your type. It's okay. So that's what I did. What I did now is that I made everything in liquid thing. You know what I mean? Cash stuff. And so I invested it and in good expenses. So now what my telling you this is that I have no property, but now I am renting. So what I do now is to pay my rent, sleep. I sleep, very good sleep. I don't have to worry about paying maintenance, taxes, all this stuff. And I have to have this background with the loan, the people bring up and everything. I just pay my bill. It's a little bit hard, but I have a peace of mind. Now my other problem is that, not problem. How about that's the thing. I have 6 children, and I have my investments, and they told me that I'm supposed to tell my investment people to whom I will give my leftovers, you know what I mean? Right here. But I just said, okay, make it, after everything, after paying everything, my bills or whatever, which I don't have, because I'm a very simple woman, I don't buy anything. I don't need anything anymore. I just need, you know, That's what I need. So I said, okay, give it evenly, right? And they were asking me, evenly to everybody, even they're not good to you. They are hard-headed, they're like troublesome, whatever. I said, I don't have the kind of children, but I will give even if they do, I will give them evenly, even, you know. And then I set aside something for my donations, you know. So, is that a good idea?
Yeah, I'm sure Jeremy's got something on that one. That's a great answer. Just sell everything and.
Yeah. So I stood up because I wanted to be respectful of everybody's time, right?
Yes.
Right, we had an agreement that we were gonna start on time, and we started a couple minutes late, and I wanted to honor the agreement that we're also gonna end on time, so right now, it's just after 8 o'clock, and I don't wanna step over that with anybody. And I am gonna address your comments privately. Right? We're gonna address, and I'll tell you why, we're gonna address it privately, because everybody's circumstances are different. And a lot of what we discussed, or a lot of what you discussed in your share is not a financial advisor matter. It's a matter that gets discussed with your estate planning documents and how we leave our property to our heirs, right? The reason I stood up though is because we wanted to thank everybody for coming. It's really, really great that you guys came and you took this time and you spent it with us and you had great questions, and we're happy that Dan and Melanie helped put this together and that we were able to be hosted here. So thanks a lot.
We have Chief St. Larry with the Holy Name Society. We promised the program would end at 8, but we invite you to socialize. Technically, we're not thrown out, but the custodian comes in to secure the building at 9 o'clock. So if you want to socialize or address the panelists, I want to share with you though, very, very briefly, the Holy Name Society co-sponsored this with the Wellness Committee. We have 4 nurses here. You can see them on the 3rd Sunday of every month, where they have blood pressures, and sometimes Marianne Kozel is there to do glucose studies and the consultations they have. As far as the Holy Name Society is concerned, we did a program similar to this with one person, with an elder law attorney, about 2.5 years ago, and clearly the sense is that this kind of program needs to be repeated periodically. So there's evaluation forms. Those are helpful to our parish ministries to kind of work with panelists in the future, and we will do this 2 years, 2.5 years, a year, whatever. But your evaluations are very, very helpful to help panelists tailor the programs to your needs. So if you take that seriously, we'd appreciate it. And again, thanks to our pastor who agreed in concept to this. Without his approval, nothing like this happens, and he was extremely open to this and saw this need. So we thank him. We thank all of you for being here, and especially our panelists, and all the work that Melanie did. Thank you.